Well, a lot of things. So don't take stupid risks. Like a calculated risk is not a stupid risk, and there's a big difference. You can point out a couple of things that you should not do because taking care of yourself, it's also taking care of what you're trying to nurture. So that's one thing that I learned with mistakes and anti-delusion problem. Like you don't need to know the whole thing, but you need to know who is. And sometimes it's not like just bad people. Is people that understands the specifics of the situation. Some professionals, they're very good professionals in certain areas, but not in others. And you need to surround yourself with people that is able to help you make good decisions in very specific things around how you build this type of companies.
Ignacio, how are you?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Can you share about your background before we start the Cutler and the venture? What led you to entrepreneurship?
Well, thank you, Burak, again, and thank you for the question. So I guess that this journey began about 10 years ago. I used to live in Brazil, and I was working for a company, and then I had my family farm, and we were coming back to Argentina soon, and I decided that I wanted to jump into the entrepreneurship, and I had an experience at that moment with an Italian company doing more technology, like hard technology for the agribusiness industry in Brazil. And I really liked that. And when I went back to Argentina 3 years later, I decided that I wanted to do something that was more related to what we were doing at my family level. And I began to experiment with one almost abandoned farm that we had in the cattle business in Argentina. And and I began to solve one problem, just trying to set up a normal business. I really quickly understood that there were some gaps and holes in the information. And I said, okay, I can find a creative way to solve this using technology. And I think that's a little bit on my end how my story began, and that took me to today.
So what made you realize there was an opportunity around cattle management software?
So the problem that I began to solve by then was related to not having frequency in weight information with the cattle that we had, and even inventory. So I'm talking about 20 and even there was already an agtech world and everything. Like the cattle was always kind of abandoned industry by the technology, and we were doing all so manually. We would feed cattle, and it was all on pen and paper. And I figured out a way. I put a water scale, a normal scale in front of a water trough, just to make that the cattle, whenever they were going to drink water, they got a weight. So that ultimately turned into we ditched the scale because it was too big, and then we passed into a camera. And even if that didn't end up being our product, but that just threw me in and threw us into an industry and a set of problems around collecting data and the data collection problem in the cattle industry. And what happened within time is that we realized that we were solving a cool problem with a cool technology because we were already using AI, but it was too small of a problem, and people all around us, farmers all around us, were having even more basic problems that with the data. Like they were missing the whole picture of connecting that piece of data with all the rest of the management required information. So that's where we in 2020. So I'm just jumping several years between my initial experiments and when we really created the company. That ended up being our pivot in 2020, where we decided to not pursue the sensor route, but pursue the platform route, which we understood we believed that we understood that had many more levels in which we could grow, if it makes sense.
So did you pivot to a product to a software?
Yes, we launched a company in 20, but it was more of a sensor company. We would do automation, there's the sorting gates in the cattle farms, and we had this camera, which you still have, but it just kept on the sidelines. And we were training algorithms to have the weight, but it was also everything about the weight and handle that. And then in 2020, pandemic helped a lot because we had a lot of installation issues, and we had a lot of conversations with our customers by then of this automation system and this camera pilot, and the problem was always the same. This is cool, but I'm still in the meantime I spend more time solving this other issue that it's taking me a lot of time, and I'm making a lot of mistakes because I'm not having the right piece, the right puzzle. So we said, hey, we are close to the problem, but this is the other problem. So why don't we just use the experience we have dealing with hardware, because we did all these automations and sensor stuff. So we were already capable of reading many devices of the market, like scale heads, EID readers. And we said, hey, like we can put all this into a one-stop shop platform that is able to solve all these integration issues. And that's what basically I did. By that time, I already lived in the US and my two co-founders lived in Argentina. So we began to experiment with farms with a piece of this new system that we were imagining and halfway creating. So we focused on a part of that big problem, and we began to test it in Nebraska and Minnesota and in Argentina as well. So that was really good. It was a very good experience. When we really tested, it was like beginning of 2020, and that gave us, okay, we need to go for it. And at the company, we already had investors, so we had to explain our investors that, hey, like we're pivoting because this other problem has a lot of more projection. There's a lot more that we can do than doing this other thing. Even it's cool. We're just going to put this in the fridge, and we're going after this other problem.
You also changed the market then from Argentina to US, as far as I understand.
Well, yes and no, in the sense that we were already testing our camera thing in a big farm in the US. It was like too big of a farm for the second problem that we decided. So we also said, hey, like we're going to switch to this because we're going to spend a lot of time and it's going to take us 3 years to finish this other product. And there's this other thing. Did you agree that you should be doing this? Yes, absolutely. So they are campaign, and then we can begin simultaneously with the same people that we were working in Argentina before. Just like we would create like pods of farmers to give us feedback on how we should do that, how we should design this thing, what were the requirements. And at the same time, we identified a couple of existing players in the US, and we talked with a lot of, like, not a lot, but some farmers, and they said, hey, you should be doing this part first because that's how I'm going to compare you against what we have today. So we understood that we should create a part at the beginning that was comparable to what the industry had already and make it better. And that's what we did. And that, like, I think it was one of the best decisions we ever made.
Who are the typical customers for your product now?
Yeah, so far the typical user is a farmer feeder. It's a farmer feeder that, at least in the US, it lives in the Corn Belt. So it's a crop farmer that also has a feed yard, and a part of the crop that he sells as a crop, and the part of that he uses for feeding his own cattle. So these are typically family companies that have everything between $500 revenue all the way to $30 million revenue. There's a lot of variation. Like there are even larger farms, but this is like the segment that we are focused on. And these are the guys that are every day using trucks every day, I don't know, 2 or 3 days a week, processing cattle. They're doing a lot of stuff. Like things are happening all the time because they're feeding every day. So they are really naturally good adopters of technology. If you compare to the rest of the value chain, of the cattle value chain, or also because they are also crop farmers. So crop farmers are in general like the best adopters that you can find.
How is the competition and market? What are the trends that you are seeing in the cattle industry and animal agriculture overall?
So of course it varies by market, but in general we see that there's been like waves of digitization over since the end of 80s or early 90s, where some companies did the first versions of any sort of dedicated software for the industry, especially for larger farms, and they kept on the market serving certain segments of this industry. So you have the software from the early 90s that it's really rusty, but it works. It's complex from a analytical perspective, but it's overcrowded. Then you have the 2000s type of software that is a little bit more complex, but still it's server-based. Then you have a more recent wave of the first cloud softwares, or a mix between those two worlds, which were the ones that really woke up like the majority of the farmers. And I would say since the 20, you have like a real leap in how many farmers in proportion to the total are digitized, in the sense that they use some, like not only Excel. So these are the players, and these players remain there. So we try to compete with them with different tools because they have different virtues and different problems. And particularly the most technologized players, these are the ones we go like directly against. They know us, we know them, we talk with them, and it's a fun. It's
How many customers do you usually talk in a week time?
That's a good question. So if we are talking about my like whole team, we must be talking about with around 50 farmers per week. In a month, we are talking around with around anything between 100 to 200. I'm just ballparking, but I can say this because we have a system where we have our board, like a sort of like canvas board. We use Jira not only for the hardware, for the software development, but also we use Jira for the commercial development. And we have all our tickets, all the people that we're talking with. So we're talking all the time with a lot of people. Either it's like our current customers, potential customers, that are far customers, far away customers that we are all the time talking with them, or either with nutritionists, veterinarians, feed companies. It's a very intensively social activity because we are either signing them up or just checking how they are, or we are trying to make them sign up, or we are just having feedback why didn't sign up, what are the things that we want to validate in advance for the features that we're developing, because we are like very intensive developing features all the time. So we feed from them as much as they feed from our software.
Are you working remotely? What does the team look like?
So yeah, we are pretty spread out, not only because I think that was a little bit the evolution of our company, and we are a bunch of Argentinians doing software and selling software in the US and of course in other countries, but like 80% of our revenue comes from the US. And even there, we are spread out because sometimes some people are localized closer to the market. And our market is like in the US, we are present in 16 states now. And that's a lot of space. So the farm itself, the farm market is a very physically spread out market. So we need to be moving all the time, and that involves a lot of lonely time. So we try to do like go in couples just to keep the mood and to build knowledge collectively. And we have a lot of meetings, but it's like the day by day is distance wise. Yeah.
What was the process like building out the founding team and early employees? How do you maintain the culture with a distributed team across multiple countries?
These are all very good questions. I guess, well, coming back to your first question, we are 3 co-founders and 2 of us come from a previous bad experience at a previous startup, but we came out healthy from that, and we said like the problems that we had with these, we're gonna correct them and we're gonna start all over again. So at the beginning, he and me, we were like only employers, and then we had the person that would become afterwards our third co-founder. He was initially an employee, and we upgraded him to a co-founder, and he's our CTO. And so some of the people that are the 3 of us, we were the ones that suffered all the pivot. And when we had this new route, there were a couple of 3 or 4 people that were working in the old model, so they kept going away like naturally as we began, because it was not just like it was not a 0 to 1 change. We had to merge, we had to respond to customers on the previous model. So we had to do a transition, and across that transition, we began to find like on a contact basis, referral basis, all the key people that are today. So we're still a small team. We're not that small now. We're like about 17 people, but we have the size and the soul of a small team, in the sense that we talk each other still on a daily basis. There's a lot of problems that we solve just with a couple of phone calls, regardless of the scheduled calls. And I think the culture, it is something that you cannot completely define. It's something that you define sometimes unconsciously with your actions. So what we try to maintain as much as we can, certain things that we feel that define us in terms of how we work and how we make decisions and how we participate people of the business in reality and the decisions. So we try to share decisions. We try to, we will try to do it for as long as we can, and then we'll have to probably find new ways to spread out the culture that we have. And I think that's the reason why absolutely most of the people have remained in the company over the last 2 years. So we are really, really proud, honestly proud about everyone that is in the team.
So what have been some most difficult challenges you have faced so far as a founder?
Oh, a lot of those. Okay, fundraising is of course the classic one. I think the fundraising was at the beginning the most important one, as we didn't realize that our real problem was the product market fit. So at the beginning, like before a pivot, you think that your problem is fundraising. Then you understand that like it is the opposite, is that you can, like, until you don't find like a real route, fundraising is it's an uphill route. And once you find a pathway, like all the things begin to clear out. And once you have had like some bad experiences, you know what you don't want, and so that helps you to make healthier decisions, who you can count with. So those are really important things that you only see when you have problems. And I think that the fundraising is always the problem, that sometimes it's a ghost or is something that is overlooked, because sometimes it's hiding a product market fit issue. And when we solved that, which was not easy because we invested a year and a half doing other stuff until we really discovered what we wanted, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I would say, but I think the only addition is that in this industry is not especially sexy. It hasn't been for the last years, and that added like a new layer of complexity where we had to find creative ways to sustain the company up until we began to create revenue. And the other problem is just to make it grow. So like the problem that is always, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. It keeps you awake, is how do I go from this revenue monthly to this revenue monthly? Like I'm able to sustain it without dying along the way. And I think that is the most important thing. That's either a problem or a challenge, depending on whether you have a pathway or not.
How do you maintain your resilience through ups and downs of the startup life?
I think that I don't know. I think a lot of that comes with personality. I don't know. I think if you're focused on something and you don't give up, I feel that I'm saying like things that many people said many times, but it's like these are the things that I think they are real. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of stomach here, and how many things you are willing to give away and sacrifice for this. Sometimes you don't even do it consciously. We just assume it that's the way. That's why I think that, and of course you need to find some point in your life that gives you balance, because otherwise you cannot do anything that is risky if you don't have any source of balance. And for some people, the balance comes from having another revenue source, like a cross subsidy. So some people, they're just more crazier than others, and they ignore certain things that an MBA would say, hey, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm not going to do that. Some people come from countries where there's a lot of things that in the US are assumed as guaranteed, and they're not guaranteed. And I think part of the hustle that we have is that we really, like, this is a cultural feature of our countries. There's a lot of things that we don't give by guarantee, and we build from there, from a very low basis in terms of what takes you to get to this place, whereas other people would not do things that we are willing to do in terms of, I don't know, how many hours or how much exposure or how much I'm going to depress my salary. So there's a lot of things, a lot of decisions there that at the end of the day, in perspective, you see, and okay, I'm really capable to survive a lot of problems.
What have been some key lessons learned from mistakes or experience along the way?
So there's a couple of those. There's more than a couple, but I would say sometimes, like, you need to trust the people you work with, but at the same time, you just cannot trust blindly. You need to make sure that you're present and you're giving them information, you're giving them a projection. You're
being transparent, probably.
Yeah, and you're dealing with the most complex that ever existed, which is humans. And just to be able, I don't know, just to make somebody work his ass off for you, it requires certain things that sometimes you, and we have lost a couple of valuable people because of that. Also understanding who you can trust in, who is a good supporter, what is smart money and what is not smart money. Well, understanding dilution things, like that's important. That led to our previous mistake in our previous startup. So there's a lot of things to learn, and there's a lot of things that we learned by pain, and there's a lot of things that we had the luck of unconsciously knowing them, because we just, I don't know, we would just, for other reason, we were making another decision, and we said that, then in perspective we said did that. So you just learn that. Sometimes we learn that you made decisions only in perspective. So yeah, there's I can mention many more mistakes, honestly.
How do you navigate work-life balance and avoid burnout day to day?
Well, you have to have a very good supporting family that tolerates a lot of the things that. So I do mistakes on a daily basis on work-life balance, and it's nothing that as much as I am very I have a lot of resistance and a lot of good things, and I also fight every day with how many hours, what is good, what is not good, how much should I be putting in my company, how much should I be putting in my family. So that's a permanent question and something that you're always negotiating internally. So I wouldn't say that I have that solved. I think nobody has. I think everybody negotiates internally and with his family and with the company its own formula depending on what's your situation in life. So that's very one to one. If you let me like alone, I will work, I don't know, 18 hours per day, and I won't go to the gym and I won't feed myself. So that's my tendency. So I have to, knowing myself and having healthy wife and beautiful kids that remind me all the time that I have to have a life that balances me. But there's always this risk of burning out, because I'm a naturally person that naturally tends to work all the time. But yeah, that's what it is. I do my best.
What do you know now about being an entrepreneur that you wish you knew when starting out your entrepreneurship journey?
Well, a lot of things. So don't take stupid risks. Like a calculated risk is not a stupid risk, and there's a big difference. You can point out a couple of things that you should not do, because taking care of yourself, it's also taking care of what you're trying to nurture. So that's one thing that I learned with mistakes and anti-delusion problems. Like you don't need to know the whole thing, but you need to know who is. And sometimes it's not like just bad people. Is people that understands the specifics of the situation. Some professionals, they're very good professionals in certain areas, but not in others. And you need to surround yourself with people that is able to help you make good decisions in very specific things around how you build this type of companies.
Do you recently read any books or podcasts that you recommend?
I recently read Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman. Because I've been trying to understand how we get to the next point. I think that's a very hands-on book that I really like. I've been reading biographies. I love reading biographies. I recently read the Einstein biography, and there's a lot of people to look up to. I'm listening, for the ones that are interested, I'm listening to a Wisnetic podcast, which is specialized in beef, which I really recommend. So yeah, that's what I've been up to recently, and then I don't have any more time because I'm reading our stuff.
Do you have any hobbies, or do you have anything that you are doing after the work?
I play soccer whenever I can.
This is cultural, huh?
Yeah, I would say that's my main thing. I play a little bit of piano when I have time. I have piano at home, and I played music for many years, especially like classic guitar. And whenever I have time, I sit there and I'm trying to teach. Like my kids have a teacher, but I just try to play along with them. Then I love to. We have the mountain close by, so we go with my wife to do the trails. So yeah, that's what I like to do. Mountain stuff. I love that.
Ignacio, thank you very much for the nice conversation. It has been a pleasure to host you today.
Oh, thank you, Burak. It was very, very nice conversation, and thank you for the questions and for the interest. It's been really a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Thank you.